Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. And if you're new here, welcome for the first time. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite coming of age horror stories. Now I've spoken about these stories a number of times already, well most of them, but for this particular video I am going to try and talk about these stories as coming of age and not much more. Stay tuned. Okay then, so let's talk about what a coming of age story involves. It is basically about the transition from a childhood to adulthood, and there's basically a few things that we need to consider. First of all, there is a loss of innocence, and in the beginning of most of these novels there's some kind of loss, whether it be a death, maybe the death of a parent, it might be a breakup. Remember, you're dealing with children, teenagers. It might be something like as hectic as a discovery of a murder or witnessing a murder. It could be any of these things. But then what has to happen is there has to be some kind of journey or quest, or internal, external, physical journey, where they have to deal with this conflict and this trauma and this thing that's happening to them. They have to face their fears. And during this journey, as I said, they have to face a conflict. It could be external, it could be internal, and from that, and the way they deal with that, they're going to grow, they're going to learn, and they're going to change. As people, as individuals, they're going to mature, and they will never be the same as a result of those experiences on that journey. And I want to make it very clear now that a lot of people assume that coming of age stories are all YA, because you're talking about teenagers, you're talking about young people, and often from their points of view, and so you assume that that is going to be a YA. That is not the case. Pretty much all of these books that I'm talking about now are adult books. They're horror, they have adult themes, and really that is what you really have to take on board here. It's not YA. There's one or two that are kind of considered it, but yeah, maybe it appeals to a YA audience, but they are adult horror novels. Now I just want to differentiate between horror coming of age and why I love horror books that deal with coming of age stories, and just your normal story. It's hard enough growing up as an adolescent, the trials and tribulations that you face. But in a horror story there's a lot more trauma, the prospect of facing something that's supernatural, something that's truly evil, as well as the human horrors that are out to get you. So that just makes, for me, a much more compelling read, much more powerful and moving read. And yeah, that's as a thing that actually makes horror just an awesome genre in general, because it just deals with more intensity, doesn't it? It deals with things that traumatize us on a high level. There's more at stake than in just any novel. So that's why I love these books. Now before I carry on to my list, I actually just want to read you something from one of my favorite books. It's going to come on this list, and it's about what we lose when we are young. It's about the things that we lose when we are moved from childhood to adulthood. And I just think it's such a powerful little page, or very long paragraph, but I want you to hear it because it's one of my favorites, and I just think it's relevant to this video. We ran like young wild furies, where angels feared to tread. The woods were dark and deep, before us demons fled. We checked Coke bottle bottoms to see how far was far. Our worlds of magic wonder were never reached by car. We loved our dogs like brothers, our bikes like rocket ships. We were going to the stars, to Mars, we'd make round trips. We swung on vines like Tarzan, and flashed Zorro's keen blade. We were James Bond in his Austin. Or is it Aston? We were Hercules unchained. We looked upon the future and we saw a distant land, where our folks were always ageless, and time was shifting sand. We filled up life with living, with grins, scabbed knees and noise. In glass I see an older man, but this book is for the boys. Okay, that is one of the books that I'm going to be talking about today. And just kind of, a lot of these books are nostalgic. They look back on our childhood and the way we used to live. And what I thought I'd do, and just a little note here, there are not many of these books that deal with female protagonists. And I know that's a problem with some people, but there are a lot of vintage books in this collection. But even then, there are some strong female characters in this collection. And I have read a lot of books with female protagonists. I think I mentioned on my channel, I'm very fond of strong female protagonists. But they just don't happen to be on this list. So just bear with me with that. But yeah, we'll get to that. Okay everyone, so the first book on my list, number 10, is Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. Excuse the tattered cover. This book very basically is about 5 boys and 1 girl who is kick-ass. And they go off on summer holidays, hoping for the summer of their lives. And what happens is that they lose one of their classmates behind in the classroom, in the school, and all sorts of strange things start happening in the town. Evil things, supernatural things, crazy things. And these kids end up being for the battle of their lives, and they have to battle the supernatural evil that is taking over the town. As I said, all these weird things start happening. It's a bit of a slow burn, and they end up taking battle, fighting this evil, and their lives are changed forever. Now, it's a wonderful horror novel. I really enjoyed it. It's got all those themes of these boys that have to grow up and take on this evil, and it changes them, and it changes who they are, and they lose people. I'm not giving away any spoilers, but it is a wonderful horror novel, but it is only number 10 on this list. So that basically gives you the indication that there are much better books to come. So that is Summer of Night. Okay, ninth position is a book that I consider highly underrated, and it is a Talisman from Stephen King and Peter Straub. And it is about a young boy, Jack, and he has to go in search of a talisman because his mother is dying from cancer. Now he has to take a journey. It's a big part of coming of age. So he has to take a journey through his world and another parallel world called Territories. And he has to try and track down this talisman to save his mother's life. And of course he experiences all sorts of trauma along the way. And this trauma comes in the form of some very weird monsters, supernatural things that happen, as well as some very real human threats as well. Now, I absolutely love this novel, not so much the second one, but this is a gem. And I also think that fantasy, because this is kind of a fantasy stroke horror, I also think fantasy is a very good vehicle for coming of age, because you've always got that kind of quest and that journey and that kind of searching for something, and have to go through trials and tribulations, and you're going to grow and you're going to mature out of that. But obviously I prefer the horror, and this is The Talisman. Okay, the next one is often labelled YA novel. I disagree, and that is The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. Now, this is a hugely, in my opinion, underrated horror novel. Yes, it could appeal to some YA people out there, but it is very dark. It's a very twisted fairy tale coming of age story, and about this boy who loses that sense of loss. He loses his mother at the beginning, and he's full of grief, and he's full of rage and anger. And at a point he gets basically transported into this other magical world. It's almost a fairy world, but very twisted fairy tales retelling. Some very, very dark retellings, but of course he is struggling through his own thing, his grief and his loss, and having to battle this evil thing as well. So yeah, it's actually an excellent story and I'd highly recommend it. And that is A Book of Lost Things. I mean, the other novels that this guy has written, crime, yeah, I'm not sure about fantasy, but mostly crime. But this is just a stunning horror stroke fantasy. A little bit of YA novel. Okay everyone, we changed the lighting a bit because it was getting a little bit dark. I was a bit concerned about that. But the next one, and now we're getting serious, and I'm surprised this is not high on my list, but it's not. And that is Toady by Mark Morris. Now, this was a 5-star read for me. I've spoken about it before. Absolutely phenomenal. A group of boys called the Horror Club. Young boys. And they induct a new member, a very strange child called Toady, into their group, who convinces them to start a seance. And the seance unfortunately unleashes a terrible evil. Now, what makes this book very special for me in terms of a coming of age, that it doesn't just deal in the supernatural monster or the stuff that they release that's so evil, but that these boys have to deal with some serious bullying, vicious bullying. So they've got a very physical threat as well as the supernatural threat, which we're going to come to later on in another book. But this is a powerful book, a book about friendship, and it's a book about, yeah, kind of coming together and having to fight this creature. And this creature is completely unique. The nature of this evil is completely unique, which is something that really attracted me to this novel. So it was very powerful. So yeah, that is Toady. Okay, in 6th place we got a book that I've raved about on this channel. And yeah, this really moved me. Moved me to tears a couple of times. And that is Joyland by Stephen King. Now this cover doesn't really have a hell of a lot to do with the novel, except for the funfair in the background. But this is a beautiful story and incredibly well written by Stephen King, who just elevates the subject matter. Now it's about this young man. Doesn't always have to be a very young child. He's like 16 I think. And he's suffering from a breakup. That's his loss. And he moves to work at a funfair over the summer, which is called Joyland. And it's about him dealing with the loss, dealing with making new friends, and also dealing with his new job at the funfair, but also discovering that there was a murder there, a murder mystery, which kind of takes a back seat. There are some very scary moments, there's some terrifying moments, but they're few and far between. It's more about this boy is coming into himself, this young man discovering who he is, the friendships he makes, and it's about love, it's about loss, it's about growing old, but basically as you're old you look back, it's nostalgia, and it's just so beautifully written. And yeah, I'm surprised this also isn't high on the list, but that is Joyland by Stephen King. Okay, in 5th place we have the first of 2 Ray Bradbury stories on this list, and this is Dandelion Wine. And now, although this is not strictly horror, it still has some dark elements, so I'm adding it to this list because it is just so gorgeous. It's about a young boy over the course of a summer and his coming of age and his discovery of who he is over the summer. And the story is broken up into, what's the thing, little shorter stories, loosely connected, vignettes, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it all deals with adventure, wonder, and different closely related things. But it's all about this boy and his experience in summer and the wonder and the magic of it. And of course there is a bit of dark and terror. No, not giving away any spoilers. There's kind of rumours of a serial killer. I hope that's not giving anything away, I don't think so. But yeah, this is just gorgeous. And Ray Bradbury, if you have not discovered him, his prose, the way that he writes, it's so lyrical, poetic, beautiful. Absolutely love him. And I'm going to be doing a video on Ray Bradbury soon. But yeah, that is Dandelion Wine. In 4th position we have Skullface Boy by Chad Lutzke. At this moment I'm reading my 3rd Chad Lutzke novella called Stirring the Sheets, and both my previous 2 books have been absolute 5-star reads for me, and this is Skullface Boy. And I thought I would do this because I've already spoken about it recently. I'll just very briefly read you my review from Goodreads, just to tell you what my first impressions were as soon as I'd finished the book. And that is, wow. This has to be one of the most beautiful, yet edgy, magical, thought-provoking, moving, coming-of-age stories I've ever read. I need some time to let it all sink in. Then I might just read it again. Seriously wonderful read. Seriously wonderful road trip novella, and highly recommended. The coming-of-age elements. A young boy has got a skull face, 16 years old. He's in a home. He's got an identity, a lack of self-identity, and basically he decides, because he hears that there's someone on the other side of America like him, so he goes on a journey and a quest to find this person. So the loss is like just a loss of identity, a loss of who am I, what am I, and he just has to experience this trip through America, and he discovers things and he learns some things about life. And people say it's YA, okay, but it's okay for people as well, for humans, for adults, because it's stunning and it's beautiful, and there's some horrific points in his life as well, on his journey that he has to overcome, some things that he has, the conflict that he has to overcome, and it's just so heartfelt. And man, I have to tell you, this guy can write. This guy can write characters that you fall in love with. He's a storyteller, and if I keep on reading stories like this, he's going to shoot up along with my top 3. He's that good. I'm really enjoying his writing. So anyway, that is Skullface Boy. Okay, we come to my top 3. Now this was a little bit difficult to differentiate. Okay, maybe not the third one, but I still absolutely adore it. And that is Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. Now this is just a creepy, marvelous, beautiful, gorgeous little novel. And it's about 2 boys. And they are born either side of midnight. And the one boy is kind of a happy-go-lucky, he pushes the boundaries, he's adventurous. The other one is a little bit more conservative, a little bit more careful, tries to hold the other one back a little bit. And one night a dark carnival comes into town, and there's a sinister force there, and the owner, Mr. Dark, I think it's Mr. Dark. And now these boys, and I said about interesting thing about them in terms of their coming of age and their journey, is that they have to fight this sinister evil. Okay, they have to confront it. But the problem is that they are so different. So it adds an interesting dynamic to the tale. Is that the one is forever pushing forward, and the other one is pulling back. And so the way that they have to deal with these problems and these things that confront these problems is very interesting. So it just adds another dynamic. Another really important thing about this book is that it introduces a father of one of the boys. I think it's Will's father, yeah. And now his fear is growing old. He feels that he's growing too old to play with his son, and that's something that really bugs him. And now what this carnival does is that it taps into the things that you really want, your deepest, not loves, your deepest, the things that you really need in your life to happen, but obviously at a price. So it's just a beautiful book. It is gorgeously well written, and it deals with so many things. It's just the prose of this man, I said it in my last book, is so magical, so poetical. I've heard some people talk down and say it's a load of crap. Rubbish. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's lyrical. And yeah, just one of my favourite authors. That is Something Wicked This Way Comes. Okay, Ryan, and I came very, very close to putting this at number 1. I just couldn't, but I came very close. I think for many people it would be their number 1. And that is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. And yes, that's what I wrote at the that's what I read at the beginning. And I just want to read you something more before I talk about this book. So just listen to this. A little bit shorter, but it's good. See, this is my opinion. We all start out knowing magic. We are born with whirlwinds, forest fires, and comets inside us. We are born able to sing to birds and read the clouds and see our destiny in grains of sand. But then we get the magic educated right out of our souls. We get it churched out, spanked out, washed out, and combed out. We get put on the straight and narrow and told to be responsible, told to act our age, told to grow up, for God's sake. And you know why we were told that? Because the people that were doing the telling were afraid of our wildness and youth. And because the magic we knew made them ashamed and sad of what they allowed to wither in themselves. That is pretty damn profound. And this book is simply masterful. It blew me away. Now, it's about this boy and his father. Right at the beginning, talk about loss. They witness this car coming crashing into this river or this lake. And there's a dead body handcuffed to the steering wheel of a car. And you think it's about a murder mystery. And yes, it is, but no. The heart of the book is about a boy's life. And Robert McCammon transports us into this boy's life. And sheer nostalgia, looking back at riding bikes and speaking to friends and experiencing things in the mind of a child, in the mind of this boy. It is absolutely gorgeous. And yes, there's a murder mystery to solve, and yes, that is part of the story, but the story is really about childhood and our, kind of moving into adulthood and our sort of life experiences and how they do transform us and they make us something different, they change us. But it is a beautiful, beautiful novel, and if you have not read it, yeah, this is in my top 10 novels of all time. Number one is still Swan Song by the same author, but do yourselves a favor, just read this. A story of innocence and evil, good versus evil. There's a little bit of supernatural stuff in there, but it's all about this man looking back at his childhood, writing firsthand from a child's perspective and telling a story about this boy's life. Absolutely magnificent. That's all I can say. Okay everyone, I'm sure you can all guess what number one is. And I just couldn't put it at number two, I'm sorry, but this book is just absolutely mind-blowingly phenomenal, and that is Stephen King, It. As a coming-of-age story, got a group of boys and a girl, and they have to do battle against a supernatural evil in a small town, and believe me, the stakes are high in this one. The stakes are very high. This novel is incredibly terrifying. And it's not just about the supernatural evil. Once again, we return to the idea that there are bullies. And these bullies are terrifying. So it's kind of human evil and supernatural evil. And these kids call themselves a losers club. And I'm sorry, out of any group of fictional characters, young fictional characters that I can identify with, it is a losers club. They're in my heart. I can recognize their names. I can just absolutely love this book. And what's interesting as well about this book in terms of a coming of age, in most coming of age stories, yes, you see kind of a growth and a maturity and a change, a transition from childhood to adulthood, but you don't see how those changes affect the adult. In this book, you can see how the trauma of what they experience, without giving any spoilers away, affects them as adults. So it's kind of told in two stories. It's not a spoiler, and it's very real trauma, and it's not always about how facing your fears and fighting your demons and conquering everything. It doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you can lose. Sometimes you can lose too much, and it could be too much for you as an adult, and that trauma can really affect you when you grow up and you live with that. So yeah, the stakes are so much higher in this one, and therefore I have to give it my number one coming of age story. It's just so powerful, it's just so tense, so everything. So that's Stephen King's It. Okay everyone, that's the end of the video. What do you think of all my choices? What are your favourite coming of age novels that you think I should read? Let me know down in the comments below, and anything else you wish to say there to me, let me know. But until next time everyone, take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.